No one wanted to mate with disabled alien princess, but one human asked, "Will you mate with me?" The planet Zalthar was a place of beauty, with bright pink skies and endless fields of vibrant flowers. Its people, the Zaltharians, were a proud race known for their advanced technology and extraordinary abilities. They lived in tall crystal cities, where everything was designed to showcase their strength and perfection. The Zaltharians valued physical beauty above all else. Strength and agility were symbols of power, and being physically flawless was a point of pride. But Princess Zyla was different. Zyla was born into the royal family, with a title and a future as bright as any other royal. She was intelligent, quick-witted, and had a sharp mind. However, unlike her fellow Zaltharians, she couldn't walk without assistance. Her legs were weak, and though they were not broken, they refused to support her body the way they should. To her people, this was an unimaginable flaw. To them, any sign of weakness was a curse, something to be hidden or avoided. As a result, Princess Zyla was often left alone. Her people admired her for her intelligence and her leadership skills, but none of the princes or political suitors dared to approach her. They saw her as too weak, too imperfect, and they could not imagine forming a bond with someone who could not walk or run like the rest of them. Her disability made her a symbol of shame in a society that only valued perfection. Zyla had long since stopped seeking comfort from her people. She had learned to live in the shadows of her family, watching as her siblings were celebrated and courted, while she remained an afterthought. The princess spent most of her days in the quiet libraries and halls of the royal palace, reading about the galaxy's many worlds and cultures. She was fascinated by the humans, a relatively young species in the galaxy, who were making waves with their boldness and courage. Despite being a young race, humanity had shown incredible potential, earning the respect of many intergalactic factions. Still, Zyla never imagined that the humans would ever take interest in someone like her. She felt trapped in a life where her worth was only measured by what she lacked. One day, a grand event was announced. The leaders of the galaxy would gather on the Zaltharan homeworld for an intergalactic summit. Representatives from all corners of space would meet to discuss the future of their galaxy, and it was an event that only came once every few decades. For Zyla, it was an opportunity to escape the palace, if only for a while, and perhaps learn more about the galaxy she had always longed to see. She didn't expect anything to change. She didn't expect to be noticed by anyone, but she also hoped for something. Even just a glimpse of a life outside the castle walls. When the day of the summit arrived, Zyla stood on the balcony of the palace, gazing at the shuttle ships as they descended to the planet's surface. Representatives of the greatest civilizations were arriving, tall, beautiful beings with shimmering skin, sharp features, and perfect bodies. Zyla felt small, a mere shadow in a crowd of giants. The summit hall was massive, decorated in shining metals and crystals that reflected the light of distant stars. Every species in the galaxy was present, each more beautiful or terrifying than the next. The humans stood out, not because of their looks but because of their boldness. The Earth delegates were small in stature compared to the others, but their eyes burned with a fierce determination. They spoke loudly, with confidence, unlike any of the other species present. Among them was Captain Miles Corbin. He was tall for a human, with dark hair and sharp eyes that never seemed to miss a thing. Miles was a man of action, a decorated soldier who had earned a reputation in the galaxy for his courage and leadership. Yet despite his many achievements, there was a quiet humility about him. He wasn't interested in power or status. He was more interested in making sure his people, his human people, were respected and had a place among the galaxy's more powerful species. When Miles first saw Princess Zyla, he was struck by her beauty, not because of the way she looked, but because of the way she carried herself. She was regal, even in the face of all the rejection and ridicule. He saw her for who she was, not what she lacked, and that made her stand out among all the others. Unlike the other delegates, Miles didn't look away when their eyes met. He didn't treat her like some fragile thing to be avoided. Instead, he smiled at her, genuinely, warmly, and approached her. Zyla, unused to such attention, felt an odd flutter in her chest. She had never met anyone who treated her like this. The other delegates, even the ones who claimed to admire her, always looked at her with pity or condescension. But this human, he didn't pity her. "Princess Zyla," Miles said as he walked up to her. His voice was calm, steady, and filled with respect. "It's an honor to meet you. I've heard much about your intellect." Zyla blinked, momentarily unsure of how to respond. The words felt so foreign to her, especially coming from a human, someone she had never considered important. But something in his tone made her want to trust him, even if just for a moment. "Thank you, Captain Corbin," she said quietly. Her voice was soft, unsure, and she glanced down at her feet, feeling the weight of her disability once again. Miles noticed the way she avoided looking up, and something stirred inside him. He had heard the rumors, the whispers about Zyla's condition, but none of that mattered to him. He was not here to judge her for what she couldn't do. He was here to see who she was. "I've heard much about Earth," Zyla continued, her curiosity piqued by his presence. "Your species is new to the galactic stage, yet you've made quite an impact." "We don't have the advantages many of you do," Miles replied, "but we've got something none of the other species have: heart. We fight for what we believe in, even when the odds are stacked against us. And right now, I believe the galaxy could use a little more heart." Zyla found herself drawn to his words. There was something in his eyes, a confidence that wasn't based on power but on something deeper, something she had never seen in the other delegates. As the night wore on, Zyla and Miles spoke about their worlds, their people, and their dreams. It was a strange but refreshing experience for the princess. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen, not as a symbol of imperfection, but as a person. Later that evening, when the summit was in full swing, Miles approached her once again. This time he seemed nervous but also determined. He paused for a moment before speaking, his voice low but clear enough for her to hear. "Princess Zyla, would you consider joining me for a walk?" Zyla was caught off guard. In the world of Zalthar, such offers were rarely made, especially not to someone like her. But for some reason, she found herself nodding. Maybe it was because she wanted to understand this human, this captain who didn't seem to care about her legs or her disability. Maybe it was because, for once, she didn't want to be alone. "Of course, Captain," she said, her voice steady this time. And so they left the grand hall behind, walking side by side under the alien stars, and for the first time in her life, Zyla felt like she belonged. The evening air was cool as Miles and Zyla walked through the palace gardens, the sound of distant laughter and music drifting from the summit hall. The moonlight bathed the flowers in a soft glow, and the stars above glittered like diamonds scattered across velvet. For the first time in a long while, Zyla felt at ease, as if the weight of her disability and the burden of her royal title had lifted, if only for a moment. As they walked, their conversation deepened. Miles spoke with ease about Earth, about his experiences as a soldier, and about the struggles of his people. Zyla found herself listening intently, fascinated by the human spirit, how they had fought to survive in a galaxy that looked down on them, how they had carved a place for themselves even though they were small in numbers compared to the other species. Zyla, in turn, shared stories of her homeworld, of the Zaltharian people and their ancient customs. She spoke of the beauty of her planet, its grand cities, and its cultural achievements. But she also spoke of the loneliness that came with being born different, of how the Zaltharians valued only perfection and strength, and how she had always felt like an outcast, no matter how hard she tried to fit in. "I've spent my life in these palaces, surrounded by people, yet always alone," Zyla admitted quietly. Her eyes lowered, staring at the ground beneath her feet. My people admire me for my mind, but they have no interest in me as a person. They see my disability and immediately think I am weak. Miles looked at her, his expression softening. But I don't see weakness in you, princess, he said, his voice steady and sincere. I see strength. Not the kind that can be measured by how fast someone can run or how far they can leap, but a strength that comes from within, from your heart. Zyla didn't know how to respond. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. She had spent so many years hiding behind her royal title, pretending that her disability didn't matter. But it did matter. It always had. And to hear Miles say that it didn't change how he saw her, it was both surprising and comforting. As they reached the edge of the garden, Miles paused. The view from here was breathtaking. The palace grounds stretched out before them, bathed in the soft light of the twin moons, and the distant stars twinkled in the dark sky. I've been thinking, Miles began, his tone a little more serious, about what you said earlier, about your loneliness. Zyla turned to him, her brow furrowing slightly. What do you mean? Miles hesitated for a moment before speaking. I want to be honest with you. I'm not here just for the summit. I didn't come here to make alliances or strike deals with other species. I came here because I believe that humanity, we have something to offer the galaxy, something no one else has. And I believe that you, Princess Zyla, you have something to offer as well. Zyla's heart raced. She wasn't sure where this conversation was going, but she felt something shift between them, a strange mix of curiosity and anticipation. What are you trying to say, Captain? Miles took a deep breath, then looked at her with steady eyes. I'm not like the other delegates. I don't care about your disability. I care about you, the real you, the person inside. Zyla felt a rush of emotions, but she didn't know how to respond. She had been told her entire life that she was nothing without her physical strength, that her value was tied to her appearance. And yet, here was this human, this soldier, telling her that none of that mattered to him, that he saw her for who she was inside. It was a lot to take in. Zyla's voice faltered. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Miles replied softly. I'm not asking you to do anything, but I want to ask you something, something that might seem strange, but I mean it with all sincerity. Zyla's eyes narrowed in confusion. What is it? Miles took a small step closer to her, his voice lowering to a whisper. Will you mate with me, Princess Zyla? The words hit her like a shockwave. Her heart skipped a beat, and for a moment she couldn't breathe. She stared at Miles, trying to process what he had just said. Was this some kind of joke? Was he mocking her like everyone else always did? But as she looked into his eyes, she saw no trace of mockery. There was no sarcasm, no hidden agenda, only honesty and something else that she couldn't quite name. It was a strange feeling, one she wasn't used to. No one had ever asked her such a thing before, certainly not with such sincerity. Why? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Miles didn't hesitate. Because I believe in you, Zyla. I believe in you more than anyone else I've ever met. I see what you've done for your people, the way you've handled all the rejection and isolation. And I don't want you to feel alone anymore. I want to stand beside you, not because of your title, not because of your looks, but because of who you are as a person, because I care about you. I think we could be something great together. Zyla's heart raced as she tried to process his words. She had never expected anything like this. She had been prepared to spend her life in solitude, hiding behind the walls of the palace, never knowing true connection. But Miles was offering her something she had never dared to hope for. It wasn't just political gain. It wasn't a play for power or influence. It was a genuine offer, a chance to be loved for who she truly was. But it was so much to take in, and fear began to creep into her thoughts. But you don't know me, she said, her voice shaking slightly. You don't know what it's like to live in my world. You don't understand what it's like to be treated as if you're less than everyone else. I know, Miles replied softly, But I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to take the time to understand you, if you'll let me." Zyla felt a lump form in her throat. She had never been asked for anything like this before. Never in all her life had someone looked past her disability and seen her for who she truly was. But Miles was offering that, offering her something more than just a political alliance or a fleeting connection. He was offering her a chance at real love. I don't know if I can," Zyla said, the fear in her voice clear. "I've been alone for so long, and I don't know if I'm ready to trust someone." "I understand," Miles said gently. "You don't have to decide right now, but know this, princess. I'm not asking you because of your title. I'm not asking you because of what you can do for me or for anyone else. I'm asking because I believe in you. I believe that together we can be stronger than apart." Zyla looked up at him, her heart racing. She wanted to believe him, wanted to take the risk, but a part of her was terrified. Could she truly open herself to someone after so many years of rejection? Could she trust him with her heart? The silence between them stretched, but then Zyla spoke, her voice trembling with a mixture of hope and fear. "I don't know what the future holds, Captain, but maybe I can try." Miles smiled, his eyes filled with warmth and understanding. "That's all I ask." The days after Miles' bold proposal were filled with a mix of uncertainty and quiet excitement. The summit continued, but Zyla found it hard to focus on the discussions around her. Her mind kept drifting back to that moment in the garden when Miles had asked her such a life-changing question. "Will you mate with me?" His words echoed in her thoughts, both thrilling and terrifying her. She didn't know what to make of it, and even more, she wasn't sure what she felt about him. Was this truly love, or was it simply an escape from the loneliness they both shared? Zyla couldn't shake the feeling that her life had suddenly been thrust into a whirlwind. The Zaltharian princess, who had always lived a life of controlled solitude, was now forced to confront emotions she had long suppressed. Every moment spent with Miles felt like walking on unfamiliar ground, his presence both a comfort and a challenge. She spent her nights in the quiet of her chambers, thinking about the strange connection that had formed between them. But during the days, she was constantly reminded of her place in the grand scheme of the galaxy. As a royal, she was expected to adhere to the customs of her people. She couldn't simply break away from tradition. Her father, the king, had arranged alliances for her. He had chosen suitors who were powerful and influential, men who could elevate their status in the galaxy. These were the men her family expected her to marry. But then there was Miles, a human, a soldier, a man who didn't care about her royal title or her disability. It was a concept she couldn't quite grasp. The first few encounters after their conversation were filled with hesitation. Miles remained patient, not pushing Zyla for answers. He continued to show her kindness and respect, and it wasn't long before Zyla realized that his intentions were genuine. But she still struggled with her feelings. There were moments when she caught herself smiling in his company, when she laughed at his stories about life on Earth, but then she would remember the weight of her responsibilities. Was she ready to risk everything for this feeling? One evening, as the summit's final discussions were coming to an end, Zyla found herself alone in one of the palace's grand halls. The large windows overlooked the city below, the lights of the capital flickering like stars. She had come to escape the suffocating pressure of her royal duties. The weight of her title felt heavier each day, especially when her father began to press her for an answer regarding her future. "You need to understand, Zyla," the king had said that morning, his voice stern. "The future of our people depends on alliances. You must choose a suitor who will help strengthen our position in the galaxy. Your feelings are irrelevant." The harshness of his words had left her feeling smaller than ever. She wasn't sure what hurt more, the coldness of her father's expectations or the loneliness she had carried for so long. Now here she was, standing before the same window, feeling as if she were caught between two worlds. One world, where she was a princess bound by duty and tradition, and another world, where Miles was offering her something she had never experienced, freedom to choose her own path. As she stood there, her thoughts were interrupted by the soft sound of footsteps approaching. She turned to see Miles walking toward her, his familiar smile making her heart race. "I thought I'd find you here," he said, his voice warm and comforting. "The summit's finally over. How are you feeling?" Zyla hesitated, looking out over the city once again. "I don't know what to feel," she admitted. "I've spent so long living in the shadows of others, following orders, doing what's expected of me. And now I'm faced with a choice I never thought I'd have to make. I don't know if I can do it." Miles stepped closer, his presence steady and reassuring. "You don't have to make any decisions right now, Zyla, but I want you to know that whatever you choose, I'll be here. Not because I'm hoping for something, but because I truly believe in you, and I want to see you happy." Zyla looked at him, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never heard anyone speak to her like that before, not her family, not her people. There was something about Miles' words that made her feel seen. She wasn't just a princess, a figurehead. She was a person, with dreams, with hopes, with fears. "I've spent my whole life following what others wanted," she said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. "But I don't know how to break free from that. I don't know if I can just walk away from all the expectations and make my own choices." "You don't have to walk away from anything, Zyla," Miles said softly. "You don't have to choose between who you are and who others want you to be. What matters is that you're true to yourself. No one can make that choice for you. Only you can." Zyla's breath caught in her throat. For the first time in her life, she felt the weight of her royal title lift, even if just a little. She had spent so many years trying to live up to the expectations of others that she had forgotten what it felt like to live for herself. "I'm afraid," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Afraid of making the wrong choice, afraid of letting everyone down." Miles reached out, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. His touch was warm and grounding. "Fear is normal, but you don't have to face it alone. You have me and you have yourself. You're stronger than you realize, Zyla, and whatever choice you make, I'll respect it. I just want you to know that you're not alone in this." Zyla looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of vulnerability and hope. For the first time, she allowed herself to truly consider the possibility of a different future, one where she wasn't bound by the chains of tradition, where she could stand beside someone who saw her for who she was, not what she represented. But the reality of her situation was never far from her mind. Her father had made it clear that there was no room for personal choice when it came to the future of their people. He had already chosen a suitor for her, a powerful Zaltharian prince who would bring their people the strength they needed to secure their place in the galaxy. Zyla's heart ached as she thought about the path her father had set before her. The thought of marrying someone she didn't love, someone who viewed her as little more than a tool for political gain, filled her with dread. "I can't ignore my duty," she said, her voice breaking. "I can't just turn my back on my people. If I do, I'll lose everything." Miles' expression softened with understanding. "I know what duty means, Zyla, but your happiness matters too. Don't let fear keep you from what you deserve." Zyla took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words settle in her chest. For the first time in a long time, she felt as though she had a choice. She could follow the path set before her, or she could take a leap of faith and choose something that was hers alone. "I don't know if I can make that leap yet," she said quietly, her eyes searching his for answers. "But I think I'm ready to try." Miles smiled gently, his eyes filled with warmth and encouragement. "That's all I ask." As the two of them stood there, surrounded by the quiet of the palace gardens, Zyla knew that the path ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, obstacles, and sacrifices. But she also knew that she wasn't alone anymore. Miles had shown her that she had the strength to make her own choices, and for the first time, she believed in herself. Her journey was just beginning. The days following Zyla's quiet admission to Miles were filled with a sense of change, a shift that she couldn't ignore. The grand intergalactic summit had come to a close, but for her, the real challenge had just begun. She found herself standing at the crossroads of her life, caught between the duties that had always defined her and the unexpected possibility of freedom that had been offered to her. She no longer felt completely comfortable in her old role as a princess, bound by tradition and the expectations of her people. But could she truly walk away from everything she had known? Zyla couldn't sleep that night. The weight of her decisions pressed down on her, and she found herself staring out of her palace window, watching the stars twinkle in the sky. The galaxy was vast, filled with endless possibilities. But for the first time, the universe felt uncertain. She had spent so long keeping her feelings buried, believing that her worth was defined by what others saw. Now, for the first time, someone, Miles, saw her for who she truly was. Not as a symbol of power, not as a princess with a disability, but as a person. That was something she had never allowed herself to imagine. The quiet of the night was broken by a soft knock on her door. Zyla turned, startled. It was late, and she hadn't expected any visitors. "Princess Zyla," came the voice from the other side of the door. It was Miles. "May I come in?" Zyla hesitated for a moment before nodding. She opened the door to find him standing there, looking as calm and steady as always, yet there was something different in his eyes, a depth, a sense of understanding that made her feel less alone. "I wasn't sure if you were awake," he said softly as he stepped inside, his gaze sweeping across the room. "I just wanted to check in. We've talked a lot, but I know that you're carrying a lot right now. I wanted to make sure you're okay." Zyla stepped back, allowing him to enter and close the door behind him. "I'm not sure if I'm okay, Miles. I don't think I've been okay for a long time." Miles gave her a soft, sympathetic smile. "I can't pretend to know exactly what you're going through, but I do know this. You're not alone. Whatever decision you make, whatever path you choose, I'll stand beside you." Zyla's heart swelled at his words, but the reality of her situation hit her like a wave. "But I'm not just making a decision for myself. I have a kingdom to think about. My father," she paused, the anger and frustration she had felt in their earlier conversation coming back to her. "He has already chosen a suitor for me, someone who will bring power, stability. I don't know if I can turn my back on that. I don't know if I have the right to." Miles stepped forward, his voice firm but gentle. "Zyla, I know the weight of duty. I understand the importance of your people and your legacy. But I also know that the strength of any kingdom lies in its people's hearts, not just their titles. And you have more strength in your heart than anyone I've ever met. You deserve to make this choice for yourself, not for your father, not for the kingdom, for you." His words settled in her heart, and for the first time in a long while, Zyla allowed herself to believe them. She had always put others' needs first, had always lived in the shadow of her royal duties. But what if it was possible to choose happiness without abandoning her responsibilities? What if the path forward didn't have to be a choice between love and duty? As she looked at Miles, she realized that she had already started to make a choice, whether she acknowledged it or not. She had already allowed herself to care for him, to let him into her heart. But there was still fear, a nagging voice in her mind that questioned whether it was worth the risk. "I'm afraid," Zyla said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. "Afraid of losing everything I've ever known, afraid of disappointing my people, my father. Afraid that this feeling I have isn't enough to sustain me." Miles stepped closer, gently taking her hand in his. His touch was warm, and it sent a wave of comfort through her. "It's okay to be afraid. Fear is a part of life, but what matters is what you do with that fear. You don't have to face it alone. I'll be with you every step of the way, Zyla. We can build something strong together, not just for us, but for the future." For a long moment, Zyla simply stood there, her heart racing as she fought with the weight of her fears. But slowly, she began to realize that the decision wasn't just about her. It wasn't about her disability or the expectations of others. It was about her right to choose her own future, her own happiness. "I want to believe in that," she whispered. "I want to choose something that's mine, but I don't know if I can be that brave." Miles smiled at her, his expression filled with compassion. "I believe in you, and I'll help you take the first step. You don't have to make this decision alone." Zyla's eyes filled with tears, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of relief. For the first time in her life, she allowed herself to let go of the fear that had held her back for so long. She wasn't alone. Miles had shown her that it was possible to have both duty and love, strength and vulnerability. "I've never had anyone stand by me like this," she said, her voice shaking. "I've spent so many years thinking that I had to face everything alone." "You don't anymore," Miles replied softly. "You don't have to face anything alone, Zyla, I'm here." And in that moment, something shifted inside her. She took a deep breath, the weight of her fears starting to lift. She didn't have all the answers. She didn't know what the future held. But she knew one thing. She wasn't alone, and she had the strength to choose her own path. The next day, Zyla stood before her father in the grand throne room, her heart pounding. The king sat on his throne, his expression as stern as ever. His gaze swept over her, his eyes narrowing as he saw the determination in her stance. "Zyla," he began, his voice cold, "have you made your decision?" Zyla straightened her back, drawing courage from the man standing beside her, the man who had shown her what it meant to trust in herself. "Yes, father, I have made my decision." The king's eyes narrowed. "And what is your decision?" Zyla took a deep breath and met her father's gaze. "I choose my own future. I choose my own happiness. I choose to marry not because of power, but because I love someone who sees me for who I am, not for my title or my disability." The king stared at her for a long moment, his face unreadable. "This is not what I had planned for you," he said, his voice tight. "But you are my daughter, and if this is truly what you want, then I will not stand in your way." Zyla's heart skipped a beat. She had done it. She had chosen. And in doing so, she had chosen freedom. Freedom to love, to live, and to build a future that was hers. As she turned to Miles, who stood beside her with a proud smile on his face, she realized that the journey ahead was only just beginning. But it was a journey they would face together, with love and courage guiding their way. And so, Zyla took her first step into a new future, a future where she could be herself, a future where love, not duty, would define her.